gotta put all the, like that's in there, flowers and. Don't you want to, then I can wash water for other things. Where she go?
Maria.
I know. Yeah, but they're gonna be treated like that. Oh, I got the gang.
John.
Oh, that's very nice. Hi, Christina. Hi, I think
Ladies and gentlemen, we'd like to get started with our regular budget workshop here for August 28th, 7 p.m. We have roll call, please.
Commissioner Hudak,
Here.
Commissioner Parnes, Commissioner Preston,
Here.
Vice Mayor Drosky,
Here.
Mayor Gans.
Here, you all stand for a moment of silence at our Pledge of Allegiance, please. Pledge of allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. We have approval of the agenda tonight for August 28th, 2024.
Motion to approve. Second.
Motion by Commissioner Preston, second by Commissioner Hudak. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Those opposed? Okay. City Manager? Or
Mayor-
excuse me, Madam Clerk, go right ahead.
Thank you. For those attending via Zoom online wishing to speak under public comment or an item that's open for public input, please click raise hand at the bottom under the reactions tab and your audio will be unmuted when you are recognized by Mayor Gans. For those attending via Zoom by telephone, please press *9 to raise your hand and your audio will be unmuted when you are recognized by Mayor Gans. Please make sure your audio is unmuted on your end by pressing *6. Thank you.
First, I want to thank the City Commission for doing this workshop. This is an opportunity for me to provide you with the proposed budget overview when it's released to you. Statutorily, we must provide the budget. Might as well just go to the next slide. Ms. Montemayor, thank you. Provide this to you statutorily by August 15th. This year, we were able to get that to you on August 9th. Back on June 12th and 13th, we spent 2 evenings together and we went into a deep dive into the budget and went over the capital project list, the 5-year CIP, more specifically the CIP programs for FY25 in great detail. We also did department operational overviews for each department, going on the major line items of personnel, operations, and capital for each, discussing what the major variances were, new programs, and things of those nature. That was followed by commission input and then, of course, public input into the budget process, which is obviously extremely important. Since that time, we had one-on-one discussions with each commissioner following the workshop, just to explain various items that were in there, address any of the questions and concerns that each one of you had. And with that input, we proceeded to complete the proposed budget that was released on October 9th. Tonight is typically, I would have liked to have had this immediately following the issuance of the budget, as we did last year, but due to circumstances beyond all of our control, we had to wait until this evening to do that. But I'm still glad that we are able to do it, because I think it's important that before we get into the budget hearings, we go through that proposed budget with you all to ensure that we address any additional questions that you may have. So tonight, we're going to go over a presentation of the proposed budget. We'll discuss the millage rate, as well as the fire assessment fee, and an overview of the revenues and expenditures, as well as major changes that have occurred since the time that we had those budget workshops back on June 12th and 13th. There is no vote tonight. Of course, we do, we do want input and feedback from both you and the public, but your first public hearing will be on September 9th. And on September 9th, you will be doing actually the second public hearing for your fire assessment fee, your stormwater assessment fee, and your nuisance abatement fee. So that will occur and be adopted on September 9th. But on September 9th, you will also have the first reading of the millage rate and the budget recommendation. On September 23rd, you will adopt the final millage rate and the budget. Again, just for those who don't know, the reason why our September dates tend to get a little screwy and out of line with our typical meeting dates is because we must not conflict with the school board in the county in relation to when they are holding meetings, as well as some other considerations that are required by the state. So these are the two dates that we were able to select for those hearings. Next slide, please. Everything that we do is based off of our strategic plan that was adopted by the City Commission. And so whenever we're doing our budgeting, we focus on these key strategic priorities, as well as the initiatives within each one of these priorities, which consist of customer care and engagement, sustainability and eco-friendly environment, lifestyle quality, transparency and fiscal accountability, and the modernization of our city processes and our infrastructure. These were all key priorities that were identified by not only the City Commission, but through public engagement surveys and focus groups to determine what the citizens of Deerfield Beach ultimately wanted to see the city do moving forward for the next 5 years. All of those strategic priorities are grounded in our core values and how we conduct business as an organization. And to me, this is a very important piece of the strategic plan. I think it's the heart and soul of what we are as an organization and continually strive to improve upon. And that is SHARP, which stands for service, honesty, accountability, respect, and professionalism. So this presentation that you'll see tonight is very similar to the one that we did in the last budget workshop presentation back in last August. So it'll follow suit with that. Now, when the property appraiser, who is the one who appraises properties and assesses the values of properties, that is not done by the city, and we are not the tax collector. The assessed value average for Deerfield Beach in 2023 was $262,137. We saw an increase this year of approximately $25,000. Broward County's average is about $95,000 more than us. When I say Broward County, I mean all municipalities within Broward County combined. Their assessed value averages for 2024, which is a fiscal year that we're going into, that's the assessments that they use, is $382,741. Now, they've seen a change of about 29,000 in their property assessed values, whereas the city of Deerfield Beach has seen about 25,400. And I want to point out that the market value is the starting point for the property appraiser's assessment. They start with the market value, and then if you're homesteaded, you're only increased by 3% after that, and that becomes your assessed value. Then, from your assessed value, you get your taxable value. Your taxable value is your assessed value minus your exemptions. So, for instance, the standard exemptions for Broward County is two $25,000 exemptions for homestead. There's also exemptions for widows, veterans, and other circumstances as well. But for the purpose of this presentation and for any comparisons that we do, we're just going to use the standard exemptions that are normally provided for a homestead property. Also want to point out, and this is something we monitor, we do have the 11th lowest assessed values in Broward County. We did see an increase in recent years, but for the past 2 years, it's been steady at 11. Hopefully, we continue to see that grow over time. So this slide is something that I think is important, and it provides a little bit of relevancy as it relates to the number of parcels in each one of these cities that we're comparing ourselves to as it relates to the taxable values within those cities. So I'm going to just explain it a little bit because I know it's a little bit busy, but the information is good. The lines on the graph, they relate to the taxable value. The blue line represents single-family home taxable values, while the yellow line represents your condo taxable values, okay? And then the light blue bar represents the number of homes in that city, and the darker blue represents the number of condos in that particular city. So you can see a correlation of the number of parcels related to the taxable values for each one of these cities. The first one on the left is Hollywood, followed by Tamarack, Coconut Creek, Coral Springs, Sunrise, then us, Deerfield Beach, Dania Beach, Oakland Park, Pompano Beach, and Fort Lauderdale. We often get compared to other cities as it relates to millage rates and taxes and those sorts of things. And as you can see, some of the ones that we typically get compared to have higher values and more parcels. However, we're responsible for providing the same level of service as these other cities. I want to also point out that the taxable value for Deerfield Beach on homes is approximately $248,000, whereas the condo values is $130,650. And we have more condos than we have homes. So our ability to raise taxes is a little bit different than some of the other cities that you see on this graph. Another busy slide, but I'm going to explain it, and we're going to do some comparisons to the same cities that we just spoke of. What this graph is right here, and I need to preface it that this is not 2004 data. This is 2024 data. It's 2023 data that's provided by the state. And what this shows you is the assessed values within Deerfield Beach. And on the left-hand side, the properties go from 1 million all the way down to 50,000, okay? The blue, that represents your single-family homes, and the gray, that represents your condominiums. The pinks, the yellows, and the blues, those are things like mobile homes, multifamilies of less than 9 units, and multifamilies of more than 9 units. But the thing to pay attention to here is the distribution of the properties within each one of these ranges. So you can see, as an example, the number of condos that we have with an assessed value of less than 50,000 is about 2,000 different parcels. And we even actually have some single-family homes in that range as well. So now let's take, and I want to also say that we max out on the graph at 3,500 parcels. And as we move forward, some of these cities with more housing stock, they'll max out at like 6,000 parcels on the graph, and I'll point that out as well. So here you can see next Pompano Beach. They're more well distributed in the center of the graph with their home values and of course their condo values. Their condo values are much higher. And I think the reason for that is just because of the policies that they have in relation to what they want to see in the city of Pompano Beach. They have more high rises. They have more development on the beach that is driven by condos. And so you see the values of those of condos much higher in the middle of the range as it relates to the property values. And again, Pompano Beach, they're maxing out at parcels of above 6,000. I'll move quicker as we go through these slides as I've already explained what we're looking at here. Sunrise, lower property values, mostly a mix of single-family homes and condos. A lot of condos in Sunrise with very low assessed values. They're maxing out at about 4,500 parcels. Tamarack, similar to Sunrise, lower property values. I think they actually have, they have almost the same, if not more, condos as well. Moving on to Boca Raton, stark difference here. You can see the number of both homes and condos well above $1 million, and that's reaching almost 6,000 parcels that they have that are assessed at over $1 million or more. So the distribution in Boca Raton is much different than what you see in Deerfield Beach. Coral Springs, middle of the road, so to speak, mostly single-family homes. They're maxing out at about 7,000 parcels in that category of assessed values between 300 and 400,000. Coconut Creek, also lots of condos. They have a similar development to Century Village that we do. So they have a lot of condos as well. And they max out at 3,500 parcels in the category of 200,000 to 250,000. But now that we've looked at that data, we've looked at, how many parcels are in the city and what those taxable values are, it correlates to the millage rates. And here is a chart of all the millage rates in Broward County. And the box there represents kind of the world in which Deerfield Beach lives in, or what we would compare ourselves to many of these other cities. And you can see that we're in the ballpark in the middle of the road. Deerfield Beach is the 1, 2, 3, third line from the left when it comes to millage rates in Broward County. The one thing to remember is that the taxes paid by a property owner are paid not only to the city of Deerfield Beach, but they're paid to the North Broward Hospital District, Broward County, the South Florida Water Management District, School Board of Broward County, and the Children's Services Council. The city's taxes represent approximately 30% of the total taxes paid on a property. The other 70% go to other jurisdictions. And so the total millage rate breakdown for a property in Deerfield Beach is 20.3546 mills. And you can see the distribution of the millage rates from the other organizations that are on the tax bill or the trim notice for each property owner within Deerfield Beach. In FY24, we had an operating millage rate of 6.0018. The recommendation is to maintain that millage rate and not increase it this year. But overall, the millage rate in Deerfield Beach will be going down as it has consistently over the past 10 years. The millage rate recommendation for this year is 6.1851, down from 6.2538. Talking about the history of the millage rate, you can see here that there has been a steady decline in the millage rate over these past 10 years, and this has been in a combination of reduced debt millage rate as well as the operating millage rate as well. Just take a look at that slide and move on. Okay. Again, Nothing, one size fits all here. Every city runs a little bit differently. They have different property values. They have different number of parcels. They have different levels of service, but comparing to the same cities, you can see last year's millage rates, which are in gray, and then the proposed operating millage rates. This is operating millage rates only, operating millage rates for these cities that we compare to. So some are going down slightly, some are going up actually substantially. Next slide, please. This is a new slide that I didn't show last year, but after looking at the data, I thought it was interesting to see it in this format and to provide this to the City Commission. But one of the things that we talk about in Deerfield Beach is economic development and the value of that. And I think this graph represents that. One thing that I want to point out is that, again, the gray is the current net new taxable value, and then the blue is the proposed net new taxable value. And from city to city, this is going to fluctuate year to year, because as big projects come online and then fall off, you might see an increase in one year and a decrease in the next year. That's normal. But overall, we can look at the net new property value for the year and get an idea of what we are doing in terms of economic development in comparison to others. A city like Fort Lauderdale, who's a major metropolitan city with, at this point, skyscrapers and huge developments. You can see this year they're looking at about $600 million in new development. Whereas this year, the city of Deerfield Beach is going to see about, $41 million. And again, we have a lot of projects that are in the works. So there's going to be years ahead of us where we're going to see substantial increases. And then there was previous years where we had substantial increases. We had one project that came online that was approximately $160 million, just that one. So, it'll ebb and flow. And I think it's a little low this year because we've got a lot of projects that are breaking ground. But once they're complete, I think we'll see a change on this. Again, another correlation that I think is important, and we talked about taxable values and as they relate to operating millage rates. And what you can see here is a general correlation with the total taxable values within each city, and which is the vertical line, as it relates to the millage rate, which is the teal line going across. So, cities like Fort Lauderdale, who have a millage rate of 4%, and they got taxable values of 60 billion. So there's a correlation there. The total citywide estimated tax collection for 2025 from ad valorem tax revenue is 66.48 million. The tax increment revenue that will go to the CRA, which is just the city's portion to the CRA, is 2.85 million, with a projected net general tax collection of 63.63 million. 1 mil generates $10.7 million of ad valorem tax revenue, and that's an 8.86% increase in taxable values at a net of 11.3 billion in taxable value in the city of Deerfield Beach. Just a graphic depiction of the ad valorem tax revenue over the past 10 years. Another major source of revenue within the general fund is the fire assessment fee. Here is, again, this one's a little backwards, so I apologize, but the 2024 final adopted rates are in the dark blue, and the 2025 proposed is in the gray. So you can see several are going up this year. And the thing that I want to point out is that in comparison with other municipalities that have a fire assessment fee, the average fee in Broward County is $391 per ERU. Deerfield Beach on its proposed, or excuse me, its preliminary rate resolution that was passed a few months ago is at 325. However, if you take cities with a population similar to ours, those between 70,000 and 100,000, that average fire assessment fee per ERU is $408. And again, the preliminary rate resolution adopted by the commission that will be finally adopted on September 9th is currently at 325. At $325, the revenue estimate is approximately $17.9 million. CIP plays a major factor in budgeting, not only for governments, but obviously the private sector as well. And the CIP, as a reminder, is an indice that relates to the price increases for goods and services across the board, including energy and fuels. And particularly between 2022 and to the end of 2023, we saw CIP increases above 6%. Now it is cooling, and this is the Miami Fort Lauderdale index, the more regional local index. If you look nationally, this would be a little bit lower. Also pointing out that the pink line is less, food and energy, and the blue line is all items. But currently, we're just above 4% here regionally, and I believe that nationally, it's a little bit lower than that. Moving on to the budget overview. Within the general fund, we are showing almost an $18.5 million increase. I'm going to go into great detail about what that increase is and what makes up that increase, so I won't go over that right now. But other notable changes, I want to point out that we're projecting in the Building Services Fund an increase of $400,000. That relates to the building activity that we are expecting to see in the new year. And Mr. Power has done a really good job in previous years of estimating what that number will be. So hopefully he's right again. Within the Road and Bridge Fund, you can see a $2.7 million increase. That is related to surtax project funding that we're getting from the county, that penny for transportation surtax funding. We've got a reduction in grant funds, which is related to the pay down of ARPA. Utilities Fund operations shows a $5 million increase. This generally is related to a lot of projects that were completed in previous years. Solid Waste Fund has a slight reduction this year. You see a $5.7 million increase in the Stormwater Fund. This is related to the major projects that are going on throughout the city in each district, that being 8th Avenue, Crystal Lake, MLK, and Deer Run. You can see debt service is going down. That's consistent with the millage rate that you saw, as well as our non-ad valorem debt service. It's only related to the other than non-ad valorem debt service. So this would be our other revenue bond issuances that we have done. And overall, the capital improvement plan shows a reduction of $4 million. That will ebb and flow year to year. It'll go up, it'll go down based on the projects that are coming online and the cost of each one of them. This does not include the CRA fund, and the general fund also does include insurance services, and the medical insurances fund as well. So now going into that $18 million increase and what is made up of that. So one, we saw a $2 million increase in fire rescue services, a $1.7 million increase in the law enforcement services contract. Our health insurance is estimated to go up by $2.5 million this year. Personnel services, which comprises of fringe benefits, salaries, all of those types of things across the board, $2.6 million. Property insurance, we're estimating, is going up by $655,000. Water and sewer and solid waste to the general government, which is a representative of, we have enterprise funds, which are there to fund themselves. They need to sustain themselves. That's utility fund, the solid waste fund, and the stormwater fund being the three major ones. They charge back to the general services fund on those charges. So at City Hall, we have water, we have garbage, we have to pay for those things back to the enterprise fund. So that is an impact increase of 371,000. Parks and Recreation, irrigation, those sorts of things are all included in that. So, and then of course we have the Centennial Celebration at 500,000, previously at 350,000. We increased that based off the comments provided by the commission at the June workshops. That'll be reflected on another slide as well. We also talked about an increase in landscape services at 300,000. And then the majority of this, and I'm going to go into detail on this when we start talking about fund balance, is 12.1 million, which is a transfer to the general fund. And this is related to fund balance, things that fall into the fund balance after the close of the fiscal year and then go into the new fiscal year. And I'm going to go into detail about what that is. But these are the operating expenses that are impacting the general fund. And I know it's not a straight line to the 12 million, and that's because we do reductions on other things in order to balance the budget throughout, this budget process. All right, so let's talk about some changes that have occurred since those budget workshops. One, we had a reduction of $1 million on the interloan repayment from the CRA. This was the loan that both the CRA board and the city commission entered into to front load the funding for the Sawgrass to Seagrass project. As I mentioned, we increased the funding for the Centennial Celebration. We also changed a part-time position, admin position, to a full-time position. The water charges that we talked about earlier, we originally estimated at almost $1 million, and we reduced that by 655,000. So the net is that increase of the $370,000 that we talked about on the previous slide. There's an increase in electrical charges at $53,000. And then these two right here, recognizing that we are going to be presenting the results of the Public Safety Master Plan to the commission sometime later this fall, we wanted to put some dollars in the budget to ensure that we can continue on with that process. What those dollars represent at this point most likely will include additional activities related to architectural and engineering services to get us moving forward with what the results of that master plan are. So for instance, if they are recommending a new fire station, what is that fire station going to look like? How many square feet is that going to be? What's the estimated cost? Those are the type of activities that we were talking about with those dollars right there. Then 250,000 increase for the downtown master plan. As you know, we've gone through the ULI study recently, and we have a draft back from them that we're reviewing. And so again, later on this fall, early winter, our goal is to bring that back to the city commission to present those findings and then talk about next steps. Some of the things that we already talked about in next steps would be re-engaging the community on a charrette with what is the outcome of that study that ULI provided to us. So we wanted to put dollars aside for those types of activities on both of those projects. Then there is a $4 million general fund assigned fund balance for the FAU Research CIP project. And so I'll go into detail on that one. As you know, we have the sale of the 1045 project at $6.5 million, and included in that sale is $7.5 million of community contributions. Part of that community contribution is $4 million towards the reconstruction and widening of FAU Research Boulevard from 10th Street down to 48th. The funding that we have in surtax and loan proceeds will not cover the entire project. Now, we have to start using that surtax money, I believe, beginning in 2025 or early 2026. The goal is 2025 to get through the final design, construction, procurement, and letting of that project. However, we're not going to see the $4 million community contribution from the 1045 project until later years. So what this does is this takes $4 million from the undesignated fund balance and reserves it in the fund balance, okay? So that we can fund the project up front with, city dollars that would be reimbursed at a later date by the $4 million that we get from the community contribution. Does that make sense? Okay. And then we did some reductions within our fleet capital replacement at a reduction of almost $90,000. The proposed budget revenues for all sources are here. We're seeing a net $4.4 million in the ad valorem tax revenue increase. Local option sales and fuel taxes increase of 5.4. That's where the surtax dollars go to. That's the revenue source. That's the category of revenue source for the surtax dollars. Seeing some increases, proposed or projected increases, I should say, in utility services tax. Some other significant ones would be franchise fees and charges for services, which make up most of the enterprise fund revenues there. And that's based off of the rate schedules that have been adopted by the City Commission to fund the capital infrastructure in those various enterprises. Judgments, fines, and forfeitures, you see a $2.6 million increase. That's most likely going to drop in years going out. And what that represents is the majority of it. And I have to say that we've done a really good job with increasing our collection of fines and forfeitures, but that also has to do with the school camera program. So we know that there's going to be a learning curve for the public once this thing goes live, and we expect to see a large bump and then it drop down. Transfers in, that is a category of what we call non-revenue. So it's really not coming from a revenue source. What it represents is money moving from one fund to the other for various reasons. And so that always fluctuates. And debt proceeds, as we talked about, is going down. And the use of fund balance overall is going down. We're going to go into what that $35 million is for the use of fund balance. At this time, I'm going to take a little break from talking and turn it over to the Deputy City Manager to go over a few more of these slides.
Good afternoon, Mayor and Commissioners. Some of the things that we will be doing as initiatives in this upcoming year, one of the primary things that we brought forward is a school camera, and that's to accommodate the school enhancements within our 7 school safety zones to encourage reduction in speed and improve our quality of life. Some of the other things is the ERP implementation. We have a number of modules that we're in the process of working through and implementing. We anticipate implementing and going live with the finance module in January of next year, and the HR module in the summer. This is a multi-year process that involves configuration, testing, and implementation, and at least 2 of those modules will be implemented. We'll continue assessing and implementing more phases as the needs arise. Another area is looking at our master plan for our parks, trying to identify potential opportunities, gaps, and areas that could be enhanced. And look at opportunities for addressing improvement in our park system. Continued redevelopment of the downtown area, as the manager had talked about earlier. Talking about outreach. After the outreach is done, developing some plans, some concepts, and starting to move forward with those. The fish and pier restoration, you're very much aware of that. That's anticipated to take about a year. The public safety master plan, the manager had spoken about that earlier. We anticipate getting a preliminary assessment in the fall. We'll be having discussions with you, discussing those, and then developing some concepts for moving forward. Another thing that's noteworthy is that the contract for code enforcement, code compliance expires next year. One of the things the public safety director had brought to you was that assessment in the form of a workshop. And there are two specific areas that needs to be addressed. One is the delivery of service and the level of service in comparison to other municipalities. I think the public safety director had indicated that we are a little below what other municipalities, comparable municipalities are. The second thing that we need to address is how do we deliver those service levels? And that needs to be brought back to the commission for some determination to determine how we move forward. One of the things that we did in this budget year is included the position of a code compliance manager on staff to assist in, regardless of whichever way we go. I think that's a recommendation that would suit us well in terms of having that person on staff, even if the service is contracted out. Continuing with our central city engagement, the planning, the marketing, the outreach. At the last commission meeting, the commission had approved some agreements and contracts for that. The centennial celebration, which we anticipate will start at the end of this year, kick off in January and go until June, July timeframe with our anniversary. Completion of our lifeguard towers. A lot of them are pending the turtle season for us to complete the installation because it requires some equipment on the beach. Issues of coastal resiliency in terms of the Dune Master Plan and moving through with that, artificial reef master plan, the beach renourishment. We did a Vision Zero master plan and starting with implementation with that. And then similar to code or building services, the contract for that expires next year. So we'd be needing to go out with that. Other initiatives, a lot of these you're familiar with in our road and bridge funds, Southeast Avenue Bridge design, the Crystal Lake Bridge design, street resurfacing, Pioneer Grove streetscape, highway lighting upgrades, and the FAU Research Boulevard project to start the design of that. In terms of stormwater, designing of the MLK project, MLK Avenue, Southeast 8th, the West Deerfield drainage improvement, and the Crystal Lakes area. So those are all areas that we'd be moving forward with. On the utilities, we have already started the AMI project. We'll continue with those. The ion exchange, the chemical improvement project, and the reverse osmosis element replacement. And with solid waste, we'll expand our composting, the pilot program that we had done, applying for grants, which we anticipate to get. And one of the other critical things we'll be doing is a feasibility study for having our own city-owned trash transfer station. Another thing that we'd be looking to do is to modify our residential garbage routes, so collection routes, to take advantage of some potential efficiencies that we think would be able to get. So these are some of the initiatives that we anticipate having this upcoming year. One of the things I'll point out, a lot of these are multi-years. So you may have seen this in a previous slide, a previous year. You'll see it this year, and you'll probably see it next year again. An example of that is a pier. We probably started the design in one year. We started the construction in another year, and we'll complete it the following year. So, I'll make that statement to manage the expectation, because we're talking about it here as an initiative doesn't necessarily mean it will be completed in the next fiscal year. In terms of personnel changes, some of the things we plan on doing is we have will call lifeguards, and based on their availability, we thought it best that we convert 8 of those positions to for part-time. In terms of hours, we think that this will better serve the public in terms of coverage. We're converting to, as much as possible, to 4 10-hour shifts for these employees, and this will better suit us. Similarly, with our summer camp lifeguards in parks, we're converting some of the positions that are now part-time to a different configuration into 3 lifeguards, 3 year-round lifeguards. We have continuing concerns with addressing the needs of the city in terms of supporting the bids, in terms of supporting the contracts, and moving through with some of the things that we need to do in our procurement department. As such, there's a recommendation that we add a senior buyer to assist in moving those things through. We already talked about the need to upgrade the part-time admin assistant in the public affairs, as well as a digital marketing specialist. Additionally, we recommend in adding the assistant director of information technology and the code compliance manager on staff. The expectation is that the code compliance manager would be brought in on staff. The position that frees up in the contract, we'll fill that with a code compliance officer. So we'll get an additional code compliance officer funded through the contract, and we'll add the manager on staff. Additionally, an executive officer in the fire department is being recommended, and that we feel strongly about when doing comparisons with other municipalities and the coverage in terms of the executive level. As it is now, if the chief is out for an extended time, we have to get a chief from outside the agency. We have no continuity in terms of anybody at the executive level familiar with what's going on and running on a day-to-day basis, especially with the expectations of completing the public safety master plan and moving through on a strategic level, looking at those issues, as well as simultaneously managing the day-to-day operations. We thought that this was previously requested and recommended before, but we thought this was an opportune time to put this in the budget because the need is there and it's critical. Thanks. Thank you.
Thank you, Horace.
Thank you, Horace. Just one point of clarification. For the ocean rescue lifeguards, we're taking the 8 will calls and creating 4 full-time. In the Parks and Recreation, we're taking summer positions and making those part-time. And to elaborate on why we're doing that with an ocean rescue, it's so that we can go to 10-hour days. Okay. All right, so let's go into the fund balance here. So the first thing I want to point out is that within the general fund, the use of general fund fund balance is 20.9 million. But let's talk about what that represents. All right, first, and I'm going to do the first one last. So the $4.6 million is carry forward from FY24 to FY25 on ARPA projects. They funnel through the general fund balance. Okay. Then you have your general fund capital projects. Those flow from FY24 down into the fund balance and then back out to FY25 capital fund. Okay. So that's not new money. The FAU Research Boulevard project, I've already explained, but let me just recap. Again, that's taking unassigned fund balance, current unassigned fund balance, reserving it in your fund balance, making it assigned fund balance, so that we can use it for the project and reimburse it when we get the proceeds from the community contribution on the 1045 project. The new use or the projected new use of fund balance or unassigned fund balance is $3.9 million. Okay, last year, the anticipated use of fund balance was 4.7. So we're actually seeing a reduction in the use or the reserve of fund balance to fund projects year over year, which is a very good sign. That means we're getting closer to a position of pay-go, meaning you can pay for these capital projects on an annual basis, which is really good. And just to kind of give you some idea of what that looks like and how's that going to affect our fund balance overall, the fund balance at FY23 was 28.2 million. When we were here last year, we had projected it would probably be around 25 million. And so we actually saw an increase. So historically, we've seen increases in our fund balance, which is good. It's, let's go back to how we got a better credit rating, which we'll talk about a little bit later. But it's never steadily increased. There was a year where we saw a dramatic increase. We got to 38 million at year end. And that's because we had a pot of money from ARPA. We had $10 million in ARPA money sitting in the fund balance before we were able to actually use that money for the projects. And so At one point, it was 38 million, but we always said that that's 10 million is going to drop out real quick. So, but steadily, you can see an increase in the fund balance year over year, and we don't expect that that will fall off. We expect that we'll at least maintain this fund balance that we reported to you in FY23 or better. In the utility fund, we have a new use of 5.2 million. And then, of course, $1 million in carry forwards. This is consistent with the utility master plan that we discussed for funding their capital projects. And then within the solid waste fund, you can see some carry forwards as well that make up that total of the $35.6 million in total fund balance of each of these funds. So the 35.6 million is not in the general fund. 20 million is, we've already explained that, and the rest of it is in other enterprise funds. Again, we did go substantially into the capital improvement plan, which remains the same as we had presented to you at the June 12th and 13th workshop. But this just gives you an idea of the funding sources that are related to those projects. And just pause here so we can look at that. Next slide. Moving on to the capital improvement plan for FY25 in the utility fund. Again, lower, just some of the projects that were much bigger started in this current fiscal year, but we have not seen the new water treatment construction project yet. We'll see that probably in FY26. AMI continues. Happy to report that we're ahead of schedule by about 20%. Within the solid waste fund, we have some capital changes that we're going to be doing within the fleet garage and the administration building, and then within the stormwater capital fund. This is the annual stormwater, the unanticipated stormwater improvements. A lot of times, sometimes we see things, just we have to address them in the field or as we see them or as they're requested. So we always budget that 400,000 for those particular needs. For fleet and equipment, again, we said we did do a little reduction here, but the overall across all funds is 6.2 million in fleet replacement. The largest contributors to this is heavy equipment within the solid waste fund, as well as a fire platform and rescue that is on our capital replacement schedule. So we talked about some things, but future considerations that we need to keep our eye on is the downtown revitalization and the city hall replacement. The need to develop this economic hub for the city is there. I believe that with the input of the public to produce an end product that they can be proud of, and to make sure that we also are sensitive to the needs of the community is vital in this process, and we will make sure that the community engagement process is intentional as we move forward. And we talked about the public safety master plan and the parks master plan. These three plans together are going to work in unison to some degree, because the Parks and Rec master plan is going to identify the needs of all of our parks. Not only Pioneer Park as it relates to this downtown revitalization, but also what do we need in terms of parks, facilities, and/or fields, and how is that going to impact Tam O'Shanter? I know the commission has been very anxious to move forward with Tam O'Shanter, but I think it's important to identify what our needs are before we start getting P3s thrown at us to tell us what they want. Let's tell them what we want. And in addition, when we're looking at the public safety master plan, BSO headquarters right here for law enforcement is also going to play into this downtown development plan, as well as our fire station assets. You know, we have a fire station on the corner of Hillsborough and Federal that is, I believe what you're going to find in the master plan report is that it really is beyond renovation. It just does not meet the current requirements. A lot of these stations, they were built in times where it was male dominated. But you see a lot more diversity within fire departments now, which is a great thing. But the problem is things like bunk rooms and restrooms and things like that were not designed for that type of thing. So there's going to be a lot of changes that are going to need to occur. And when you take a station down, you either got to find a temporary place to put it or a new place to put it. So all these things are going to play with, property acquisition and property disposition. And as you know, in the city of Deerfield Beach, any property over 750,000 that we look to dispose requires referendum. So this is going to be a big undertaking with all three of these projects. But I think together, all three of these projects are really important to look at it holistically. Want to just talk a little bit about the fire assessment fee, what we do for a new study in the next year or two. And as I showed you with the current rates across the board in fire assessment fees, countywide and within our population, we are relatively low in comparison, and we are much lower than what our 100% assessment is at $374. So I foresee that when this new study activity occurs in a year or two, that you're going to see a substantial increase in that 100% assessment, whereas we are already about $50 below that, at least as the preliminary rate resolution proposes. So that's just something to consider as you move forward, because the fire assessment study, this new one, it's going to contemplate things that this current one did not. The high rate of inflation of costs that we've seen for fire equipment and infrastructure, the public safety master plan capital projects that will need to be contemplated. All these things are going to fall in. Oh, and then the FRS increases that came from the state that we had to deal with last year. So all these things were not included in that study activity that we did a few years ago. We already talked about the central downtown corridor. I think it's a great thing that we're moving forward with those two contracts. The two biggest things that came out of the ULI study that they said we needed to focus on was community engagement, strong community engagement, and not only engagement, but gaining trust. And so the other thing was the rezoning, and you really can't have to do the first part of that before you do the rezoning. And I think the two contracts that we recently approved are going to help us get there and make some real headway on that area of the city. 1045 project. Right now, we're expecting that they're going to submit to the county here in short order, followed by submitting to the city. So we're really excited about that. We're planning the outreach and the marketing for that project in conjunction with the developer, providing them guidance on what they should and need to do as it relates to those items. So we expect that the community outreach and the marketing will take place here probably, I think it's going to probably occur before the end of this calendar year, if all goes well. So moving along nicely there. But to manage expectations, as unfortunately I had to tell Commissioner Preston, probably won't see that project, the grand opening on that project till sometime in 2029. So, all right. So I know there's always a lot of comparison to the speed of the way cities do business, but private sector is just as slow on some of these things as well. And it's because they're doing a lot of this stuff behind the scenes, and we do things so publicly up front that it seems like it takes a really long time. And then, of course, 10th Street. 10th Street is wrapping up their procurement process right now. Actually, me and the mayor met with FDOT recently, and they said that they'd probably be underway on construction in about, what I think they said, about a year or so. And so that's going to have a huge impact on the city. And, I think at the end of the day, it's going to be a positive impact on the city. And that's because of the hard work that the public and you commissioners have done to make sure that FDOT does not, railroad this project through the city of Deerfield Beach. and the things that you have done. But that's going to be a big, big thing in future considerations as we move forward. All right, so let's talk about what these taxes that we're proposing and what the millage rate we're proposing, what that looks like on a home. Okay, we talked about the average values of homes, and so for a condo it's 130 some odd thousand, a single family home approximately 250, and right now the single family market value of a home in Deerfield Beach is 689,000. That's the market value. So if you bought your home today, all right, your taxes would be in FY24 would be up $3,954.62 with a fire assessment fee of $325. That's a total of $4,279.62. That's annually. The daily tax rate for the city, okay, now this is just the city taxes, all right, 30%, but this is what the city's responsible for. Daily tax rate is 11.42. In FY25, that would be, an increase of about $1,100. Going back to the condo values, you can see that the annual tax with the fire assessment is approximately $823.83. That's about a $5 increase for that property. And then the average single family is about actually a reduction of 3.65. But realistically, it's going to go up because you remember we're only 30%. So as a summary on the recommendation in the proposed budget is an operating millage rate of 6.0018 mils with a reduction in the debt service millage for a total reduction in the millage rate to 6.1851 mils and a fire assessment fee of $325 per ERU or single-family property. The preliminary rate resolution has been drafted at that recommended maximum rate of $325. You cannot go higher than $325. You can go lower. However, the trim notices that have already gone out to property owners reflects the $325. I want to just remind the commission of the financial accountability and budget performance that the city has had over the past several years. Being recognized by GFOA, getting their distinguished award for budget development, also being recognized by the Government Financial Officers Association for their certificate of achievement on our annual consolidated financial reports. Again, our external auditors have given us a clean audit this year, and even stating that they have seen an improvement in the financial assessment of the city year over year. Last but not least, I think this is all reflected in the recent increase in our bond rating, not only in our existing bonds, but our IDR, which is the rating that's used to assess new bonds, that went from a AA- or AA to a AA+, the second highest above a AAA. I'd like to thank the City Commission for their participation and their input throughout this entire budget season. I want to thank staff for the hard work that they have done. In particular, I'd like to thank Mr. Horace McHugh, who really helped out in the budget process as we were down in not only with our finance leadership team, but in the budget office itself, and particularly Tamara Baker, our budget manager. She has made vast improvements in the budget process and the budget presentation year over year, and she's doing an excellent job. And with that, I'm happy to answer any questions that the commission may have or the public.
Thank you. Commission, any questions? Is that a yes? No? No. The only thing that I have so far is when it comes to the FAU project, the old FAU project, I should say, our we're pulling out the $4 million
Mhm.
now. Do we have to do all of that now?
No. We're going to need to encumber, whenever you enter into a contract, you always have to have the money available to encumber on that contract. But similar to the situation with the CRA, we're going to use the available funding that we have first and then dip into that $4 million.
Okay, so we could possibly do half of that this year, then half next year. Is that right?
We probably won't touch the $4 million, expend that $4 million this year. We'll get under construction this year and we'll start to eat into the loan proceeds and the surtax funding first. So finance will have to keep a close eye on that. And then once we need that $4 million, we'll start dipping into that.
So what is the benefit of us pulling the four million out now and putting it in there as opposed to using it for something else?
Because we'll enter into the contract this year
And you'll need to have that?
and we'll need to have that.
Okay. I thought you just said that we didn't have to do that, but you're saying we're going to need it,
So you have to promise the money to the contractor,
right?
but as far as actually giving him the dollars, we can come from those other funding sources first.
Okay. Okay, thank you. Is there anyone from the public that would care to comment on the budget? Anyone online? Okay.
Dan Hurst, 330 Southeast 19th Avenue. I hope none of the commissioners mislead the public by saying we are lowering the millage rate yet again this year. As City Attorney Deborah Reese can explain to you, the state of Florida requires municipalities to only use the rollback rate in announcing to the public whether property taxes are being raised or lowered for the coming fiscal year. And for the 15th time in the 16 years that the mayor has been up on this dais, property taxes will have risen. For the final time, the mayor, the city manager, and hopefully the District 4 commissioner will preside over voting for a budget and setting the millage rate. Rather than bore the three of them with numbers and statistics that would show how easily they could lower the operating millage rate, I decided to entertain them by retrieving some of their quotes from past years regarding the operating millage rate. After all, if you weren't going to lower the millage rate last year after receiving over $16 million from the federal government, you will never do it. So let's look at the comments from first fiscal year 2024. In 2024, the proposed operating millage is 10.6% more than the rollback rate of 5.4253 mils. The mayor said once the reserves reach a certain point, money should be given back to the residents. And although the city manager was given a goal to lower the millage rate, expenses increased, which was out of his control. Thereafter, the mayor commented on the cost to repair the pier, as well as the expenses the city would incur should a major hurricane hit. The mayor said after having a conversation with Congressman Jared Moskowitz, he learned that FEMA is running out of money. Mayor Gans said he had hoped reducing the millage rate would be an option, but at this time it cannot happen. Commissioner Drosky said he would like to see the operating millage rate reduced, but no one has mentioned eliminating projects. His initial thinking of reducing the millage rate further is no longer his top priority. In fiscal 23, the proposed operating millage was 9.6% more than the rollback rate of 5.470 mils. Commissioner Drosky said his concerns have been addressed in the budget, including reducing the millage rate, which is the most important to him. He said he does not want to see any increases in the millage and wants it to continually decrease. In fiscal 22, the operating millage was 6.0018, which is 5.13% more than the rollback rate. Commissioner Drosky applauded the reduction of the non-operating millage, which has always been important to him. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else? Okay. Gwen, former representative, go ahead.
Thank you, Mayor. Good evening, Mayor and Commissioners. Gwen Clark Reed, 1430 Southwest 6th Way, Deerfield. I wanted to ask the city manager about the shred truck. We we had talked about that in the last budget, and I don't see anything about bringing that service back to the residents in this budget. Can I ask what was going to happen with that?
Yes, ma'am. We'll get an answer for you. Thank you.
Thank you.
Anyone else online? I'm going to close it to the public then. Thank you. Yes. Oh, yes, sir.
Take it a bit. Hello, Michael Estrada, 1431 Southwest Sixth Way. So in general, for these meetings, I would definitely like you all to think about how you're doing outreach to the community to get people here. I know for at least the way I see it is announcements on email and social media, but I know a lot of my neighbors aren't on email and aren't on Facebook. And as we can see, there's plenty of seats. So I would love to see the city doing more to get more people out to these events.
What do you suggest?
I would suggest something like flyering in specific neighborhoods where you're seeing low people coming out. I
That
think,
would be the entire city, considering there's no one here.
well, I think we could start somewhere.
Okay, flyers. All right,
Yeah,
thank
so-
you.
Perfect. That's one thing. Appreciate the comment. Two, I know I made this suggestion before. It would be helpful if the folks that were coming up here presenting had laser pointers. I know I have glasses, but these screens are a little hard to see.
Yeah.
Obviously, the building's not perfect. We're not going to get new screens, but a laser pointer I think would help. The other thing, we have the bridge survey that came up. We're now on like the third time that we're doing this bridge survey. I know we've had to make changes and revisions to it. I imagine there's less and less people taking this survey. So again, just thinking process wise, how we might improve that and streamline that going forward. Generally with the budget, one thing I know that I saw in there were spots where we were being proactive that I really appreciated that. Things like looking into drainage for the residential neighborhoods, things like looking at the parks and how we're going to be revising those. So that's, really thinking forward. We know that if you plant a tree today, it's not really going to give you shade for a decade. So it's really helpful to see us thinking, what's going to be coming. I do want to say with some of the programs that we do have in here, like Freebie, I would like some updates around kind of where we're at as far as the number of people and the cost per person compared to where we anticipated being. I think it's a great program. I've used it plenty of times, but at some point, I know we really do need to figure out, what's it going to look like moving forward for the second half of the pilot. I know I made the suggestion again before. I think we're missing an opportunity to get more of our senior communities out there if the hours were earlier in the day. Every driver I've talked to says that they get a lot of folks that are coming and doing their grocery shopping. And I know from the stats that we saw, that number could be a little higher. So I would suggest thinking, who we're doing the outreach to. And then lastly, just some shout outs. I really appreciate all the different community events that have been popping up. It really does seem like there's been a lot of things on the calendar. A Magic the Gathering tournament, a chess tournament, archery competition, etc. I went to the Community Engagement Cafe. That was a lot of fun. So really appreciated that. And lastly, I know the Arboretum's coming up on its 30-year anniversary in 2025. Just wondering if there's any kind of acknowledgement or celebration planned with that. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Appreciate it. Okay. Is there anybody else who wants to actually speak? So I don't, you raise your hand. All right, we're gonna be the last one. Perfect. Thank you.
Okay, Lucia Del Genio, 707 North Shore Drive. This is a little basic, but coming from a resident, I think it's something to look at it. As an idea how to decrease the millage. First, it's just 8 points, like increase revenue from other sources, diversify the revenue streams by enhancing income from non-tax sources such as fees, grants, public-private partnerships. 2, cost efficiency, implement cost-saving measures across various departments. This could include energy-saving initiatives, renegotiating contracts, and reducing waste. 3, economic development, encourage local economy growth to expand tax base. More businesses and higher property values can lead to increased revenue without raising the millage rate. 4, debt management, efficiently manage and reduce existing debt. Lower debt levels can reduce the need for higher taxes to cover interest and principal payments. 5, community involvement, which he mentioned. Engage with community to identify priorities and areas where spending can be reduced without significantly impacting service. 6, regular audits. Conduct regular financial audits to identify inefficiencies and areas of improvement. 7, reserve funds. Utilize reserve funds judiciously to cover short-term budget shortfalls instead of increasing the millage rate. And final, public awareness. Educate the public on importance of maintaining or lowering the millage rate and how they can contribute, such as supporting local businesses and participating in community programs. Thank you.
Thank you. Appreciate it. You're welcome. We can close it to the public then. Commissioner Preston?
Thank you, Mayor. I appreciate the comments from everyone. I think Mr. Estrada makes a great point about, we're doing a budget workshop. It would seem to be an advantage if we had more participation. But I think the idea of flyers would be very difficult. But an electronic board, the electronic board in District 1, District 2, 3, and 4, strategically placed, would begin to advise everybody of an upcoming city commission meeting. And that would be a good way to be able to increase our participation and public awareness. So I'd like to see how we can get those electronic boards out where basically the city can see them. Again, strategically placed, advising, especially of a meeting of this importance, the budget. All of the people that took the time to come out is simply because they knew about it. And they come out and they contribute and give very good comments, things that we take under consideration. It would be awesome if this entire chamber was filled, but that's a suggestion. I think that if we implement it, we will definitely see an increase in the city commission meetings as well as budget hearings like this.
Thank you. Commissioner Hudak?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Over the last 2-3 years, we've seen an increase in costs, whether it's at Publix, whether it's buying a car, buying gas, construction has gone through the roof. The city experiences those increases as well as we do at our home. The fact that we've been able to keep the millage rate, actually reducing it again, I think is a testament to not only the city manager and his staff, but as well as all of the department heads. Our rating is now AA+. The city is financially better off than it has ever been. And the fact that we have been able to, reduce the millage rate once again, in the face of, costs that are going through the roof, whether it's paying for our staff, whether it's paying for fire trucks, whether it's paying for our police protection or our fire protection. I think it's a testament to the men and the women that work in this city. And I do appreciate all of your efforts in controlling costs in your various departments. And my hat's off to all of you. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else? Vice Mayor?
I first, City Manager, want to thank you and your staff for putting this presentation together. We always didn't have these year after year, so it's very good to get the level of detail. I did express in our one-on-one meeting some concerns with the budget, which I continue to have, but as I have in every year, I've gone out to my district. My district is very heavy with homeowners associations and other organizations. So every time this year I go on the road show and really hit all of those entities very hard, which I've already been doing. So I'm going to continue to do that. So I'm going to reserve judgment tonight, but I still harbor some some problems going forward, but let me talk to the District 4 residents and see what they want. The best example I can give you was at our last meeting when we had the villages of Hillsborough Park, where we spent an extra, $100,000 for the park. But those are improvements that the community wanted. They wanted to see additional improvements to that park, and they were willing to pay for it. And so I want to get the sentiment of the residents before making a final judgment.
Thank you. City Manager, can you answer the question that former Representative Clark Reed had about the shred truck?
Yes, absolutely. That is something that we discussed in the budget workshops, and that is coming back. I'm just going to point back to our director. Is it a truck or a piece of equipment? It's a trailer. Yeah. So we're going to have a shred trailer, and that will be we'll be able to procure that in FY25.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
Do you need me to address any other questions, Mayor?
Yeah, what is our current values at right now, our average value that we had in the presentation?
The average value is 200, taxable value for a home is 248,000.
Thank you.
When is the implementation of the shred truck? When is that, the trailer, when is that gonna be actually functional?
I don't know the exact date because a lot of heavy equipment is got long lead times, but we should be able to procure that within the first quarter of the fiscal year. Once we receive that, we'll be able to implement that program. And one thing that I also wanted to mention, the electronic signboards is actually something we're working on. That was an ARPA-funded program that was approved by the City Commission, and I believe we're doing 2 coming up. We've identified several locations throughout the city, but I know that the first one, and so forgive me, I don't have all the details offhand, but I know we're going to put one over by Pastor Willie Ford Park there on Dixie and 10th Street. And then the other one is going somewhere out west, but I forget the exact location. So we are looking to implement that and continue to implement that as we move forward, because right now the only one that we have there is on Federal and Hillsborough.
Thank you. I'm actually glad you brought that. Are you done? Did you have more? Okay. Electronic board, and we did that in District 1. We have one right there. And people hated when we were doing it. We had a lot of people complain about it. A couple of people that, are admins on their little special political websites were all against that. And now we want to put them in all 4 different districts. It's interesting to hear that. We have one now. Doesn't really work for getting people in this room, obviously. What I would say to your recommendation is this, and why I don't think the electric signage or whatever people are going to choose to come to what meetings they want to. We advertise for this the same way we advertise for all of our special events. Why can I sell out a sip and stroll using the same marketing that we do for this meeting? Why are we able to sell that out? People are going to choose to go to the things they want to go to. When we had an issue with a fence over by Natura, we had 40 people in the room. People are going to choose what items they're going to come out to. And I can tell you that the advertising for that particular thing wasn't very much. So, I've been here long enough to say that, I've seen the public outreach that we do, and sometimes you have to watch meeting fatigue. I think that's something you have to watch out for. And I think you were alluding to that a little bit as far as similar to doing the surveys, that you have to kind of watch that. And I agree with that point. I feel like you're damned if you do, damned if you don't many times with this. When I first was coming to meetings and first ran for office and first got in office over 16 years ago, they had the one presentation of the budget. It wasn't even a presentation. The budget was voted on, 1 hearing, 2nd hearing, 2 meetings. That's it. There was no budget workshops. If you wanted to review the budget, you had to go to the city hall and do a public records request and pay $45 for them to give you the budget. That's what it used to be when I first got in office. We changed that. We had people in here when we first got computers, when we first got iPads. I had people standing up complaining, saying, "You're spending money on iPads. It's terrible. How dare you spend money on iPads? They would rather spend mods of paper." So, we've come a long way in that. And while, one of the gentlemen tried to point out, I don't know if I call him gentleman, but one person tried to call out about how millage rates haven't really decreased since I've been here. Well, we did it one year. We decreased our millage rate by 1 mil 1 year. We did that because we were putting in the utility tax for the first time while every other city had it. We were the only ones that didn't, putting it in place. And when we did that, we said, okay, we're going to lower our millage rate by 1 mil. That was back when a mill was valued at less than $4 million. 1 mil in our millage rate is equal to almost $10 million now. We did that and we paid the price. The ripple effects of those decisions were made and felt for years to come. Costs have escalated well beyond anything that we could imagine. But our property values have also. We're at $248,000. When I first got in office, we were under $160,000. That's huge improvement over what we've done. The use of laser pointers, great point. I had a hard time seeing it just from here looking at it. So that's something we need to do. And think about that when you're doing these presentations. I know it's hard to get all that data in there, but if you could kind of think about that, that is a really good point. You know, it's interesting that there were some great points, Ms. Eugenie, that you brought up about economic development. And we're if you look at the budget, we're investing in economic development. That's what we're doing. That's what part of the money that we're moving forward with is on economic development and increasing revenues for areas, which means user fees, which is ironic because we tried to stop giving away things we were doing for free, and then people threw a fit because we were doing that. So here's what it comes down to if you want to reduce the millage rate. And this is very realistic. This is what every city does. All right. If you want us to behave differently than any other city and reduce our millage rate, take a look at what every other city is doing. And the reason they don't do that is because it's not how things work. The ripple effects of doing this 1 year up, 1 year down, 1 year up, 1 year down is catastrophic. And if they'd gone with my suggestion, which is why are we getting to a certain point about our reserves and that need to be pulled into, and we have to hit that level, and in which how much, when do we start giving back to the residents? If we'd gone with my idea of dipping into that, which we already had, and that was something at the time I made those comments, I think there was some confusion over what we actually really had in our reserves compared to what we ended up with. We would not be in the situation we did with our Fitch ratings. There used to be people sitting out here wearing Fitch shirts. Some of the admins in Deerfield Politics were all out there doing it. I haven't seen them say a single word about our increase to being 1 rating below perfect. But they were raising hell when we lost our Fitch rating before. And here's the reason why they said that we got our Fitch rating increase. The upgrades reflect Deerfield Beach's strong financial resilience, its control over revenues and expenditures, its prudent practicing of maintaining reserves exceeding 10% of its spending, and the minimum level standard warranting a AAA assessment by Fitch's standards. The city's creditworthiness is also bolstered by its strong long-term liability metrics, despite being counterbalanced by demographics and economic indicators that Fitch rated as weak to mid-range. So despite the fact that we have some of the lowest values in the city, in Broward County, and we have weak indicators that would suggest where we would be, we are doing a phenomenal job according to outside agencies. That's a good thing for us. What it comes down to is if you want to reduce your millage rate, realistically and substantially, is cut services. Where do you cut? Mr. Hers at a previous budget meeting talked about how Delray would cut their millage rate and was applauding them. What he conveniently left out of that argument is what did it cost them to do that? They saved their residents $67 a year by lowering their millage rate. $67 a year on average is what they did. What did it cost them? They're going from a 3-man rescue to a 2-man rescue in their fire department. They're cutting their parks and rec budgets. They're cutting their special events budgets by 50%. Their public works, street maintenance, certain street lighting is all going to be cut to save the average person $67. I don't think that makes a lot of sense to me. if there are suggestions that you have as far as things that we're doing that you'd like to see cut, I think those are the things to bring forward when we have these meetings. Because that would give us an idea on, as Vice Mayor pointed out, we have projects that people come in and said, we want to see this, we want this. They wanted us to increase our budget on certain projects. If you want to see us decrease our budget on certain projects, tell us what you want eliminated, because that's what's going to have to be done in order to do it. And even with the decrease that Delray did, for that $67 on average, that is a huge price to pay overall on their services. We did it one year when I was here. 1 mil, we did that. It took us 4 years to recover our parks because we cut things like fertilizer. You know that little white flower that everybody sees who doesn't make fertilizer lawn pops up everywhere? Our parks look like they were snowing because we cut fertilizer and cut it. Do you guys remember that? There's some of you who are here long enough to remember that. It looked like it was snowing because that's what our parks look like, because that's one of the areas where we cut. So tell us where you want us to cut, and we can debate that. You want to take shots and make suggestions, apply it to what is going on in the city, what you would like to see changed, because that's really the only way you're going to be able to see your millage rate cut. And then once we do that, you're going to have to help us make that decision. Is it worth the cost? That's 67. Now, it might be to you who aren't homesteaded, who own a bunch of investment properties in the city, who are taxed a little bit higher than the average person, and you want to save in your investment properties. You want to treat us like we're just an investment to you, an economic thing for you. Okay, that's a little bit different argument. But the residents who actually raise their families here, homesteaded here long-term, and in for the long haul, like the services we provide and that we do. So if you want to see those change, that's fine. But I'll remind Mr. Hers, when he came up here and drove up Plantation on his investment properties, asked us to reduce our police budget because crime was down. Wrote a letter to the editor of the paper to ask us to do that. Didn't do it in the city he lived in, but wanted us to do it here. I don't think that is the right thing to do. And those type of knee-jerk, short change, quick savings are going to cost you in the long run. And I've been here long enough to know that, because I've been in office that long to see where the mistakes were made, mistakes I've made, and recommendations that I've made. I've also seen what has succeeded and what has done well. So just think about that as we move forward with this budget process. Any suggestions that you guys have, please bring them forward. The one gentleman, Mr. Estrada, you talked about freebie and those things. That's part of the CRA budget. That was that meeting on Tuesday. You missed that one, but we can talk about that if you have some questions, but that's available online if you'd like to look at it. Okay. Thank you. Looking for a motion to adjourn, I guess. Yeah. Go ahead, Commissioner Parnas, as we're about to adjourn. Go ahead.
Okay, I wanted to thank those few citizens that came tonight and expressed their views. We run your city, our city. I've lived here for over 30 years. And I want to see it do as well as it can. The fact that you wanted to participate, I applaud and hope you'll take more of a part the rest of the year and years to come in the city itself, as you've done tonight. Once again, before we adjourn, I want to thank everybody that participated, whether or not I agreed with your suggestions or not. The fact that you took the time and you cared enough to come and be a part of it, I appreciate.
Thank you. That's a great point, Commissioner Parnas.
Motion to adjourn.
We have a motion.
Second.
Second, all in favor, say aye.